Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I think it's 11:01, so let's probably start. So I'm Rajdeep. I'm the co-founder and CEO at ReWiser. I'll be taking you through the entire presentation today. So the format for today's webinar is going to be where I'll be talking about the existing topic, which is STs and ACTs exam for the first 35 to 40 minutes. And post that, we will open the forum for Q&As, right? Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining in once again on this Saturday morning. And with that, let me quickly jump onto the webinar and let's look at the topics that we are going to largely cover today. So we'll talk about the standardized tests. What are these two standardized tests, which are SATs and ACTs? Before that, we will also try and understand the larger gamut of study abroad. We'll also talk about importance of SAT, ACT for students starting from grade 9 to grade 12. And we will also talk about not just for study abroad, but also in India, how SATs and ACTs are important. If in case you're looking for colleges like Ashoka, Azim, Premji, and so on, what are the timelines that you really need to look at in terms of SAT, ACT for your application planning? What are the countries where these exams are accepted? For ReWiser, what is the timeline and the pedagogy that we recommend you should be following for your preparation? And then we will also be talking about in detail about the digital SAT. I'm sure a lot of you must be aware that SAT has moved from a pen and paper to digital very recently. So we'll also talk about in detail about this. I would request participants to be on mute whenever. So I think if in case you guys have any question, please feel free to put it up in the chat section. We will take up all the questions towards the later half of the webinar. As I said, we will take up all the questions and we'll also allow you to unmute yourselves and ask your questions at the later half. With that, let me quickly jump onto and give a quick brief about the company. So ReWiser is a high school support company. We are headquartered out of Bangalore in India, but we have students which we are catering across the globe as of today. We largely focus for students from grade 8 to grade 12. And within the company, we have two verticals. In the first vertical, we help students with the test prep solutions, which is SATs, ACTs, and AP exams. And on the other side, we also have academic tutoring vertical, where we help students with IGCSE, IB, and A-level subject tutoring. So far, over the last 7 years, we've helped about 4,000 odd students. Currently, we are catering to students from across 8+ countries and about 15+ cities across India. So that's where we stand. Currently, a lot of our students are placed out of most of the universities across US, UK, Canada, Singapore, and India. So with that, let me deep dive into the topic that we wanted to discuss for today. So let's try and understand, first of all, how is study abroad versus admissions in India are different, right? So let me try and take that first. If you really try and understand, and I'll take it from my context, right? So I did my engineering from BITS Pilani, 2015 mechanical engineering. And right after that, I started ReWiser. So I gone through the regular Indian curriculum grind, right? So where you have to basically write the entrance exams and then get admitted depending on your scores and your ranking, right? So you write JE for your engineering, you will read NEET for your medicine, and so on and so forth. So you write CUET and hence other exams, right? However, if you really look at study abroad, they don't just look at your 12th grade scores. They go beyond that. And what is that? Let's try and understand those. So I generally say that study abroad depends on 4 larger pillars, right? The first major pillar is academics. So they're looking at your school grades from grade 9th, grade 10th, grade 11th, and your grade 12 predicted. So that means your grade 9, 10th, 11th actual scores will go into the application and your grade 12 predicted scores, because I'm sure you must be aware that when you're applying for outside of India in grade 12, you are applying around October to December timeframe, right? And by the time you would not have received your grade 12th exam. Hence, the school where you're studying, they will give you a predicted score for you, right? So that is the predicted score, which gets accounted for grade 12. So academics is the most important pillar in your college application abroad. But as I said, unlike India, they are looking for 4 years, 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And hence, I know there are parents and students in today's webinar where kids are in grade 9, grade 10, grade 8. I think this is super useful for them as well, because they will understand the importance of it at this point of time. The second important pillar that you have in your college application is standardized test scores. Unlike in India, we have JE for engineering, NEET for medicine, and other exams, CLAT for law, and so on. Unlike that, when you're looking to go outside of India and specifically US, there is one single exam, or rather 2 exam, SAT or ACT, you can write either of the two exams, irrespective of whatever curriculum or whatever major you want to pursue in college. It could be engineering, it could be medicine, it could be law, it could be anything. You still have to write the same exam, unlike India, where you write different exam for different streams. So we will talk in detail about the standardized test scores today. How important are they in their college application? And what are these exams? Should you be writing it? When should you be writing it? Which exam should you be writing it? So we will talk about a standardized test in detail. The third component, which is important in your study abroad application profile, is your profile building, right? Now, what is profile building, right? So if we closely try and understand this, profile building is nothing but, when I ask this, when I'm doing this in seminar, I ask this question to parents and students, and I get different answers saying profile building is maybe internship, maybe research paper, maybe blog writing, maybe YouTube channel, maybe some social service, right? So all of this is profile building, right? Which is absolutely fine. But I think the way we really need to look at it is, what is your end goal? If your end goal is, let's say there's a child who wants to pursue computer science engineering as a major, you need to work backwards to see what else can you do to showcase to the college that you're interested in this particular domain, right? So that is profile building for you, right? So you could consider it as an extended version of your resume, right? Everything and anything that you need to do across 4 years of 9, 10th, 11, 12, that is what your profile building stands for. So that is, again, very, very important if you're looking for the top 20, top 30 colleges abroad, especially in US again. Then there is fourth component, which is the college application, which includes shortlisting of universities, applying to universities, writing essays, writing a letter of recommendation, getting a letter of recommendation, and so on and so forth. That's the fourth pillar. And that is applicable largely in grade 12, right? So these are the four major pillars that you really need to think about when you're looking to go outside of India. And when I say outside of India, it could be US, it could be UK, it could be Canada, it could be Singapore, it could be Australia. The percentage of these four components could vary from country to country. However, they all are important in any geography, right? For example, if you're looking at US, all four are equally important. And I would just say academics is probably more important. Maybe about 50% is academic and 50% is rest all, right? The three other components. Similarly, when you look at UK is very, very academically driven, right? Because I mean, even in India, we follow British system of education, right? So for UK, your academics become almost about 75 to 80% important, right? In Canada, very similar to US, right? So there is academics about 50-60% and rest all is everything else, right? So depending on geography to geography, the percentage contribution of each of these pillars can vary. However, the all four are very, very important when you're looking to go outside of India. And not just that, even today in India, as we speak, there are about 44 universities in India which are accepting SAT scores, right? Which are super highly ranked university, which are coming up in liberal arts sector, right? For example, Ashoka, Azim Premji, Shiv Nadar, Palak Shah, and so on and so forth, which we will look at towards the later half of this webinar as well. With that, let me deep dive into today's important aspect that we wanted to cover, the second pillar, which is the standardized test. And we will be first talking about the digital SAT test. So with regards to this digital SAT, as we all know, starting this March 2023, in India or across globe, SAT is digital now, excluding the US. In US, starting March 2024, SAT would be digital. Now, the duration of this exam is 2 hours, 14 minutes. There are largely two sections. One is English and the other one is maths. It's required by most of the US colleges, and it helps in many other geographies. Now, why am I saying most US colleges? I would like to help you understand two terms here, right? I'm not sure how many of you have heard these terms, but I think this will be important for you when you are going through the admissions website. You probably see these two terms called test optional and test blind. And then there is a third term called test mandatory, which is self-explanatory, right? Test mandatory are the colleges which mandate that you have to do your SAT exam if you want to apply to this college. For example, MIT and Purdue are test mandatory, right? There are second set of college which are test optional. By test optional, they mean if in case you have done the SAT exam, you should submit it. If in case you have not, you can skip it, right? So that is test optional here, right? Now, there is a catch there, right? So this test optional term came into existence when there was pandemic happening, and there were a lot of countries across Africa who were not able to do the SAT exam. Just to make sure that there's a level playing field, colleges came out and said we are making it test optional. However, if you really look at in India, almost 70% students wrote the SAT exam, and hence it becomes counterintuitive if you're not doing the SAT without having a solid reason. Hence, if you see that there is a test optional college, consider it like a test mandatory for you. That's the thumb rule that we have been following. And I think all the counselors have been recommending the same thing, whether you talk to the admissions officer also. The third term is test blind. If you see any college which says we are test blind, that means they will not look at your test prep score at all. They will not look at your SAT or ACT scores at all. So you don't have to write this exam at all, right? So for example, UCs, all universities in California are test blind, and they've been test blind for almost about 5-6 years, or probably more than that, right? So whether it's University of UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, any universities in California is test blind. Test blind is the only term where you will not have to submit the exam. If you're very, very clear that the child has to only and only apply to California, then you can skip this exam. Otherwise, you will have to write this exam, right? I hope that's the reason why I've mentioned required by most US colleges, right? I hope I was able to explain these three terms, because when you get into the college website, you will encounter these three terms time and again, and it's important for you to understand that. It's helped in many other geographies. What are the other geographies? Canada, Singapore, India, Australia. These are other places where it is not mandatory to have the SAT scores, but if you have it, it's good to have it, and then you can submit it as well, and it will be accounted towards your admission, right? So that's why I said it's required. It also helps in many other geographies apart from US. Now, in the digital SAT, the format is, the SAT is going to be adaptive in nature. That means depending on your performance in one section, the next section will get decided. The difficulty level of next section will get decided. So SAT is sectional adaptive. Instead of 4 sections earlier, now there are only 2 sections that you will have. One is English and one is math. You're allowed to carry your own devices. So you can actually take your own systems to the exam center and do the exam on your own devices, which is a great welcome change. There'll always be a clock on the screen to assist the time management, which is again a great thing, because earlier, sometimes kids will forget to carry their watch and they find it really difficult to manage the time. You can easily move between the questions because now it's digital. You can flag them and come back to any question as and when you want to. You are allowed to use maths formulas all throughout the math section, which is again a great welcome move, because earlier in the SAT format, there used to be one section where it was a with calculator, and another one without the calculator, right? So you have access to math formula all throughout, but for the calculator, earlier there was one section where you had, another one where you didn't, but now you are allowed to use the calculator all throughout. So these are few changes that has happened on the digital SAT format. Apart from that, I think there are a few changes which has happened from the content perspective. Earlier, there used to be long reading passages, and for each passage, there would be about 10 questions. However, now there are only one para and one question. So you don't have to retain the information. You could just do it in one single go, right? So I think that is what you also have here. The exam is much shorter now. It's a 2 hours, 14-minute exams. Questions are a lot more concise and straightforward. You will have more time per question and you'll have lesser number of questions. As I said, you're allowed to use calculator all throughout. Scores are also available much faster. So they're available in, in days rather than weeks, as it was the case earlier. Now, I think a lot of people might have question here that, hey, Rajdeep, you said SAT is adaptive in nature, right? So how does the scoring works? Because what I said was, let's say if there are, there will be 2 major sections. One is English, one is math. For each of the section, you will have 2 modules, module 1, module 2. So for example, English, you have module 1 and module 2. Depending on your performance in module 1, your module 2 difficulty level will get decided. So for example, there are about 70-80 people on the webinar right now. All of us will have the same set of module 1 question. However, depending on our performance in module 1, our module 2 paper will get decided. If I have not done well in the paper, my stage 2 module 2 paper will get easier. If you've done really well in module 1, your module 2 will become difficult, right? Now, the question would be, how does the scoring work, right? And that is what this slide kind of explains. So let's assume there are 20 questions. And in module 1, let's assume there's a student who gets 16 out of 20. In that case, your stage 2 paper or module 2 paper is going to be difficult. However, at the same time, the advantage is your lower and upper limit of the score also gets decided by this, right? So your lower score can only be 680, your maximum could be 800. So even if you don't do well in stage 2, you know the minimum score is already 680. You will not go beyond, you will not score lesser than this, right? Unlike someone else. So for example, I have attempted the paper and I only got 8 out of 10. I know because I've not done well in stage 1, my stage 2 paper is easy. But even if I do everything right in stage 2, the maximum that I can score is 560. The minimum I can score is 440. So it is super important that we do really, really well in our stage 1 paper or module 1 paper, because the upper and lower limit of my scores get decided based on my stage 1 performance. And hence it becomes super important to do well in stage 1. If there are any questions pertaining to this, feel free to put it up in the chat section. Happy to take it at the end, as I said. So that is how the scoring works. Now let's try and understand and do some number crunching here. As I said, there are two larger sections, English and maths. For English, you will have a total of 54 questions and you'll have 64 minutes to solve them. The minimum score that you can get is 200. The maximum is 800. The second section is maths, where you have a total of 44 questions. You have about 70 minutes to solve them. Minimum score is 200, maximum is 800. Overall, minimum you can get about 400 and maximum you can get about 1600, right? So 1600 is the highest score, 400 is the minimum score that you can score in this particular exam. Let's deep dive into individual sections now. So as I said, in English, which will have which is largely testing your reading and writing skills, which is grammar skills. As I said, there are two-stage adaptive test design. You will have module 1 and module 2. Each of these modules will have 27 questions each, right? And you will have about 54 you will have 27 questions each, and you will have 32 minutes to solve each of these modules. So in total, you have 54 questions and 64 minutes. That means you have roughly about 1.19 minutes per question. And please do keep note of this time, because when I'm talking about the ACT, I will do a point of comparison here. So for ACT English, you will have 1.19 minutes per question. Also, important thing to note here, it says 25 operational question and 2 pre-test question. What do I mean by this? That means there are 25 questions which will be accounted towards your score. There are 2 questions which are there, but will not be accounted towards your final score. They are more of experimental questions. However, because you don't know at this point of time when you're attempting the exam, which are those 2 questions, you will still have to do all your 27 questions with equal focus, right? So I think that's how the reading and the writing section goes. Now, what do they test you on is we'll try and understand. As I said, you will have short reading passages and you have to answer the question for each of the individual para that comes to you. They're largely testing you on 4 content domain, which we will see on the next slides. All the 4 content domains, they will test each and every domain individually, and all the questions are clubbed together, which is again a welcome move. The passages are taken from sections like literature, history, social studies, humanities, sciences. So if you really look at it, I think the point I'm trying to drive home from here is the most important component in ACT and the most difficult one is the reading section, right? So any student who is not an avid reader tend to struggle in this particular exam versus any other student who is an avid reader. And when I say avid reader, not just reading fictions, I'm talking about reading in general. My recommendation at this point of time for students and parents who are in grade 8, 9, and 10th, I think you have enough time. You have time still to improve on your reading comprehension skills. I would say start reading, guys. Start reading Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. These are few places that you can go and start reading. And the reason why I'm asking you to read something which is US based is because if you really try and understand, SAT is going to test you on American English, right? Versus the British English that we follow. And there's a difference in terms of the rules as well. For example, in here, when you're following the British English, A, B and C is right. However, for US English, this is wrong. And the right statement would be A, B, and C. So there has to be a comma before and as well as per American English, right? So the reason why I'm asking you to read those articles which are from the US publishing house, because you will also start noticing these small differences in terms of the grammar rules that you have to encounter in SAT, right? So humble request, if you are in grade 8, 9, 10, start reading different articles and read from different zones, right? Economics, history, humanities, social science, sciences, That will really help you to do well finally in the SAT reading section. Now, what are the 4 content domain that they test you on? The first one is craft and structure. How well can you understand the structuring of the passage, the paragraph, the words in context, the phrases and everything. Information and ideas. So how well can you understand and read the information and figure out the ideas which are given there and then present it in a specific format. These 2 are largely testing your understanding or comprehension of the passage. The next 2, which is your standard English convention and expression of ideas, are largely testing your grammatical skills, right? They're largely testing your punctuation, colon, semicolon, sentence structure, usage, and all of that. And expression of ideas is largely testing your rhetorical skills, right? So these are the 4 major domains in which you will get tested when you will write your SAT English component. The next one is the SAT math section. Again, just like English, it is a 2-stage adaptive design. You will have module 1, module 2. Each of these modules will have 22 questions and you will have 35 minutes to solve 22 questions. So overall, you will have 44 questions, 70 minutes. And here as well, you have 20 operational questions and 2 experimental questions, just like the SAT English component. Please note the time here. You have 1.59 minutes per question when you are solving an SAT math section. Again, very, very important. We will come back to this when I'm doing a point of comparison between SAT versus ACT. So that's on the SAT maths. Let's try and see what are they testing you on. There are again 4 major content domains that they divide this on. The first one is algebra. In algebra, you will have about 13 to 15 questions, which includes topics like linear equations, inequalities, system of equations. So anything linear is what is being covered in algebra. The second one is problem solving and data analysis, where again, you will have about 13 to 15 questions. So roughly about 30-35% is your algebra and problem solving data analysis, which includes your ratio, rate, proportion, unit rate, 1 and 2 variable data, and so on. The third one is your advanced math, which roughly has about 5 to 7 questions. So about 15% each is what you will encounter for advanced math and geometry and trigonometry. Advanced math is largely testing anything which is non-linear, quadratic equation, exponential equation, that is being tested on the advanced math. Then on the geometry and trigonometry, area, volume, ratio, lines, angle, triangle, circle, all of this is being tested on the geometry and trigonometry. I think the point that I want you to note here is, please notice for geometry and trigonometry, there is only about 15% in the entire exam. And I think that will again become a point of comparison then when I'm going to talk about ACT here, right? So please do note this another difference here, where here geometry and trigonometry is only about 15%. We will see what it is in the ACT component. So that's largely what the SAT will look like. The other exam, the other competitive exam that you can write apart from SAT is ACT. Now, when I'm talking about ACT, I would like to do a point of comparison between the 2 exams, because that will really help you to understand how these 2 exams are different from each other. And I would like to clear a couple of myths here right in the beginning before I jump onto this. I think the most important critical factor that you really need to understand here is you don't have to write both the exam. You have to write just one exam. It could be SAT, it could be ACT, depending on where you are applying, when are you applying, on all the other parameters, which we will discuss, right? But it's just one exam, not both the exam, right? The idea here to present both the exam is to help you as a student or as a family to decide which is the right test for the child, right? So the idea is to help you make an informed decision. So we are going to talk about ACT, help you understand what ACT is testing you on, how is it different from SAT, and then let you guys decide which is the right test for you, right? So let's start looking at the, in the compare and contrast, let's start looking at the similar things. Just like SAT, ACT is conducted by another organization called act.org. ACT happens 7 times a year, just like SAT. ACT is also an online exam, just like SAT. You have to go to a center and write the exam. I think in all of these aspects, both these tests are very, very similar. In terms of the duration, things starts changing. ACT is a longer test. It's a 2 hours, 55-minute test. Plus there is a 40-minute of optional essay component. So that means there are a total of 5 sections, unlike SAT where there are only 2 sections. So these are a couple of differentiating factors. The other important part to note here is ACT is equally acceptable in US, but the moment you look at any other geography like India, like Canada, like Singapore, ACT's acceptability starts going down. So one of the important point to note here is, if in case you are very, very clear that apart from US, you also want to apply to other countries, you might want to give a preference to SAT because of the acceptability. However, if you are very, very sure it's US where you want to apply, then it does not really matter whether you do an SAT or an ACT, right? I hope this point is very, very clear. So depending on the geography you are applying to, SAT versus ACT becomes an important factor. Just because SAT is more widely accepted, you might want to prefer SAT over the ACT. So that's one. Now, let's try and understand in terms of how the exam is different. So as I said, there are 5 sections here in the ACT. There's English, Maths, Reading, Science, and then there's an optional essay component. The scoring is obviously different here. It's scored on a scale of 1 to 36. The average of the 4 sections get figured out, and that becomes your final score. So at least you will get a 1, at max you will get a 36. So ACT is on a scale of 1 to 36. Essays are being graded completely separately. They are evaluated on a scale of 2 to 12, and the results of the essay component comes a bit later than your regular ACT results. Now let's try and understand each of these individual sections. The first one is the English section, ACT English, which is very, very similar to the grammar section of your SAT. Please do note, you have a total of 75 questions and you have 45 minutes to solve these questions. That means you have 36 seconds per question. If you remember, there was 1.19 minute per question in SAT versus 36 seconds per question in ACT. That means another major difference, if in case between the 2 tests, you have to pick one, ACT, you will have easier questions. However, you have to be really, really quick. Unlike SAT, you have more time to solve the question, but then the level of questions would also be slightly a notch higher than what you will encounter in ACT. So as a student, you need to figure out, are you somebody who likes difficult questions, more time, or you are someone who's comfortable with easier question, but okay to do them under the time pressure condition, right? So if depending on these 2 parameters, you can decide, and this is not just in English, we will see this all throughout the other sections as well. What are they testing you on? Exactly the same. Nothing changes. As I said, this is a grammar section, very similar to your standard English convention and information and ideas, which is, sorry, the rhetorical skills. So they largely test you exactly on the same skill as what the SAT would. However, the level of questions are different. The speed that you need to maintain is different. That's the major difference here. Obviously, one more other difference now is, as I said, in the digital SAT format, you have 1 para, 1 question. However, in the ACT component, in the English component, you have 1 entire passage and you have to read the entire passage and then answer the question. So here they both are different from the passage perspective. The second section that you encountered in ACT is ACT Math section. Again, just like SAT, you are allowed to use the calculator all throughout your ACT, so there is no difference at all. However, you have 60 minutes and you have 60 questions to solve. That means you have 1 minute per question. Unlike SAT, where you had 1.59 minutes per question, right? So that's almost about 60% less time than what you had in the SAT, right? So you, again, have to be really, really quick. However, the questions are going to be slightly easier than what you encounter in the SAT. So I think that becomes another point of comparison between the 2. Now, what are they testing you on? Let's try and understand. There is algebra, which is roughly about 34-35 questions out of 60. So about 50%, 60% is your algebra. And then you have the remaining, which is geometry and trigonometry, which is also roughly about 27-28 questions. So if you remember, I had said, please do keep a note, and this is why I was saying it. In SAT, you only have about 15% of geometry and trigonometry. However, in ACT, you have roughly about 40-45% of geometry and trigonometry. Now, that's another point of comparison. As a student, if you're somebody who does not like geometry and trigonometry, then you may want to stick to SAT. However, if you don't like algebra so much, then you may want to look at ACT, because SAT is algebra heavy. ACT, on the other hand, is equally distributed between algebra and non-algebra component, right? So that is another point of comparison between the 2 exams. The third section that you will encounter is the ACT reading section. Again, here you have about 4 passages. Every passage will have 10 questions. So that's a total of 40 questions and you have 35 minutes to solve this. So that means you have roughly about 52 seconds. So again, timing wise, this becomes very similar to, let's say, what you have in the SAT. So it's by and large the same as what I will encounter. In terms of the reading, again, same thing here as well. They're testing you on, you'll find the passages coming from social science, humanities, natural science, prose fiction. So you will find it from all different gamuts. And hence it's important to read. Again, I think as much I can emphasize on it would be less, because this is one of those sections where most of the students do struggle and they find it difficult to improve. But what are they testing you on? It's exactly the same thing, your understanding of your content, purpose, tone, attitude, point of view, and all of that is what they are largely testing you on. So in terms of the style of question, they are very, very similar to the SAT from that format. The fourth section, and I think this is very, very important to understand here, there's a section called ACT science section. And I think one of the biggest myth here is, so I do get a lot of parents and students who come to me and ask me that, hey Rajdeep, the child doesn't want to do STEM course, should they still do a ACT? Because there's a science section here, or we have not taken science and we've dropped science, so should we not look at ACT? So just my answer there is, please do note, in ACT science, there is no science. It's basically testing your reading skills. You have to read the passages, and these passages are science-based passages. So please do note the difference here is ACT science entails science-based passages. So you're reading the science-based passages and answering the question. So the time is roughly about 35 minutes, and you have about 40 questions to solve it. And on an average, you have about 52 seconds per question. So that's what you will encounter in the ACT science section. So these are the 4 sections. The 5th one is essay component, which is optional, and we recommend students not to write it. So I think in terms of the exam, these are how all sections are there. In the ACT science, these are the 3 different categories of questions that you will encounter. There's something called data representation, which is largely about reading the tables and chart and then answering the question. Research summary, where somebody has done a research and presented their hypothesis, experiment results, and everything. You have to read all of that and answer the question. Third is conflicting viewpoint, where 2 people can do a research on a particular topic and then come up with a conflicting viewpoint, which is presented to you. You have to read all of it and answer the question. Please note, does it help if you have done science? For sure, no question about it, because if you have encountered that experiment in the past, you might have the context, right? But can somebody who has not done this and can do it in an unseen passage? They can definitely do it, no doubt about it, right? So I think that's the way I really look at the ACT science section. Now, I think we talked about the 2 different tests. I think we looked at all the differences between the 2. We talked about the benefits of one versus another. We talked about how they are different from each other. But I think having said all of it, right, I think it's really, really difficult for the student to maybe even decide, even if you know all of it at this point of time, to figure out whether the child should do an SAT or ACT. And our recommendation at this point of time for you would be write a diagnostic test. I would recommend, please write a diagnostic test, one for SAT, one for ACT. So if you go to our website, which is examprep.rewiser.in/register, and if in case you guys have registered for the webinar, you will anyways get a mail from our site where this link would be provided. It's a free of cost test. The student should go and write a diagnostic for the free digital SAT and ACT test and figure out which one are they more comfortable with. I think diagnostic is the only way out to finally decide which is an ideal test for you, right? So our recommendation strongly is to go write this test. Feel free to reach out to us for a free one-on-one 30-minute consultation session. We can walk you through your detailed report, analysis report, and then help you suggest which is the right test for you. That's generally how we help the families to figure out which is the right test for them, right? So I think that's about the SAT, ACT. With that, let me jump out to the next test, which is PSAT, and I won't take too long on this. PSAT stands for preliminary SAT, and I'm sure there are students who are in grade 8, 9, and 10. They probably would have heard of this term from the school as well. Some of the school actually mandates students to write the preliminary SAT, which is PSAT. Unlike SAT, ACT, which happens multiple times a year, PSAT happens only once a year, which is actually twice a year, but you can only write once. Could be October, could be March, depending on what the school will opt for. There are certain schools which offer it within the school itself. If your school is not offering it, you can figure out any other school in your city, in your locality, which is offering the PSAT, and you can register there as well. Now, should you be writing it? Why should you write it, right? First important thing, no college will ask you for your PSAT score. So even if you don't write it, it's completely fine, right? But then why PSAT, right? So I think some people write it because it helps you to figure out in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10th, where do you stand at this point of time, right? Am I at 80th percentile, 85th percentile, 99th percentile? Because this is happening globally. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people write PSAT exam. The second reason why some people write PSAT is also because you're also trying to, there are certain schools, summer schools, which you can apply for. And these summer schools do allow you to submit your PSAT score if in case you have done the PSAT, right? So that is another reason why some people write PSAT, because they want to apply to a summer school program. The third reason is, and I think this is important, if in case student is a US citizen, if you are an OCI card holder, then you should be doing PSAT in your grade 11, because that's known as NMSQT, which is National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, right? So if in case you do your PSAT when you are in grade 11, then the PSAT is considered towards your NMSQT, and it might help you to fetch some scholarship. It'll at the same time, it'll also help you to, if you qualify, it can also help you to write this in your application process. So these are the three different reasons why people write PSAT. In terms of the content, it's exactly same as what the SAT is. There is no difference at all. It is like a subset of SAT. In terms of the scoring, it is a bit different. The maximum that you can score here is 1520 as compared to 1600 in the SAT. So that's the difference in terms of the scoring, right? So that's how the PSAT and SAT are different, and that's the reason why people should write PSAT. With that, let me try and move on to the next part, and which is very, very important, which is, we understand what is SAT now, we understand what is ACT now, we understand what is PSAT. Can you help me understand when should we do this, right? So I think in this particular slide, I'm going to talk about the timelines, but please do note this is a generic timeline, right? I think one thing which is super important here is it has to be hyper personalized to an individual, right? So every child, today in our participant list, I have students from multiple countries, at least about 5 to 6 countries. And at the same time, I have students from IGCSE, IB, A levels, CBSE, ICSE, state board, British curriculum, AP curriculum. So I have students from multiple boards, right? So I think it's important for each one of you individually to figure out where you are in your cycle right now and what you really need to do. Feel free to reach out to us, set up a one-on-one 30-minute consultation session, and figure out a plan for you. But in general, as I said, let me connect it back to the first slide where we started. Academics is super important. So your academics of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th are super important. And then your profile development, which is everything else that you're doing to showcase to the college that you're looking to pursue a particular major. And that's how you're trying to show it. That all of it comes under profile development. The third component was the college application, which happens in grade 12th, right? So your application, your essays, your letter of recommendation, all of that will happen in grade 12th, right? And then the fourth component, which we have discussed in detail today, is the standardized test. When should you be doing it, right? So now let's try and look at a couple of these exams. So PSAT is something that you could do it in grade 9. You could also write it in grade 10. You can also do it in grade 11 only if in case you're a US citizen, then because it is also known as NMSQT. For your NMSQT, you can write it in grade 11, but if you're not a US citizen, don't bother writing it in grade 11. It does not really help. For the SAT, I think 9th is probably not a good time, but 10 definitely is a good time for you to start thinking and start preparing for it. Try and first step would be to write the diagnostic, figure out an ideal test for you. And then based on that, figure out when should you be starting it and what should be your ideal time when you should be doing it. It could be in your March of grade 10th, depending on your curriculum, or it could be early of your grade 11th. But ideally, by first semester of your grade 11, you should ideally be done with your SAT or the ACT exam. And then there is another exam that I've mentioned here, which is AP. And I don't want to go in detail into APs in this particular webinar, otherwise it'll stretch too much and it'll be information overload. Just a quick thing, AP stands for Advanced Placement Courses. They help you to stand out in your college application process. you get college credits while you are outside of US for the college if you do these exams, right? So there are APs which are offered for 20 plus subjects at this point of time. We will be doing a separate webinar on APs. We will send you the invites for that as well in future whenever we do it, hopefully next month. But yes, APs are something that requires a lot more deeper understanding and planning, because APs are something that happens only once a year, which is in the month of May. So you could do it in 9th, you could do it in 10th, you could do it in 11th, but you'll have to finish by 11th because 12th is when your college application starts, right? So I think that's how the overall timeline looks like. As I said, this is standard, generic, but for every student it's going to be different. Feel free to reach out to us. Happy to set up a one-on-one and discuss it individually with each one of you. The next one, as I said in the beginning, we will help you understand a couple of universities in India. Don't just bother about US. Even if you are looking at India, and there are about 44 universities as we speak today, which are directly registered with SET. They accept SET scores for their admissions. And some of the top ones are Ashoka University, Azim Premji, Flame, Kriya, Manarachna, Shivnadar, Plaksha, and so on and so forth. Now, all these universities, they also have their own entrance exam. So one method is you write their entrance exam, or the other is you write the SET. So the advantage here is, instead of applying to 5 university and writing 5 different exams, you apply to 5 university and write one exam, which is SET, and then apply through that. So I think this particular thing is not just for people who are looking to go outside of India. Even if you're looking to stay in India and you're targeting one of these universities, you should be looking at writing the SETs. And at the end, I've also mentioned the link. If you go to this link, it'll give you, this list keeps getting updated. You'll be able to find the updated list here, because not every college will have the SET acceptance for every course. So you'll have to look at the college and also the course for which it is accepted. With that, we've covered up the topics. Let me quickly walk you through our pedagogy in terms of how we at ReWiser help students work for their ST prep. We divide the program into 4 phases. We call it phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 0 is about doing a diagnostic test. As I said, idea is to figure out which is the ideal test for the student, SAT or ACT. Help the student figure out the baseline score and then start working, and also to figure out what is the right program for the student. Then we move to phase 1. Phase 1 is where there is live online tutoring happening. You could opt for one-on-one, you could opt for group session. It's all live online, so anybody across the globe can opt for it. Roughly about 40 hours of live online tutoring that happens, another 40 hours of assignment. So we believe in 1:1 ratio. If you're spending 1 hour in class, you have to spend 1 hour outside of class doing the assignments pertaining to it. All of this is done on our platform. All the questions, everything get bragged on the platform directly. This is where you are learning new concepts. Once this gets done, you move to phase 2. From the phase 2, we make a customized plan for every individual. We will assign a dedicated mentor to every student. This mentor will look at student performance from phase 1 assignments. And based on that, they will chalk out a detailed study plan for every individual student. And they will have a weekly check-in with the student to figure out how much have they improved, what have they done, what have they not done, what needs to be done to improve it, and so on. And this is the point where student is doing a lot of sectional practices. That is what happens in phase 2. Once that gets over, we move to phase 3, which is largely about full-length tests, where student will do at least about 10 to 15 mock tests before they write their actual exam. Now, just to tell you, we are one of those companies which have our own platform, which is exactly similar to what you will encounter in the actual SAT or the ACT exam. And you will get the similar platform access here. We have created our own material, and all of this material is our proprietary material that we have been using for the last 3 digital SATs. While the student is writing all these exams, they will continue to have these mentor supports, mentor weekly check-in, where they're figuring out the areas where they need to improve and so on and so forth. So all of that happens in phase 3, and it will continue until the student writes the actual exam. That's how the entire program works. And in addition to this, they get access to over 50 hours of content videos, which they can watch at any point of time. These are concept videos, depending on their availabilities, and as and when they get certain out, they can go back and review these concept videos. And the support from our side is available for about 2 attempts for any student for SAT or ACT. That's how our program kind of works overall. Feel free to, again, as I said, set up a one-on-one call. Happy to explain this program on a one-on-one setting. And as I said, we have multiple program offering. It's not just one program. We have a full training, which I just explained you, We also have something called STST Lite, wherein you just do the test, just the mock test series. We also have something called a self-paced course, where you can just come and take our entire program without the faculty support and do it on your own, right? The idea here is to see how much time you have and give you what is required rather than trying to give you everything, right? So that is what we have from the program perspective. So yeah, I think that's all that I want to cover in today's webinar. I will open the forum now for Q&As. I see there are a lot of questions already there on the chat section. Let me start taking up those questions. And before I do that, I would like to thank each and everyone who's been patiently listening to me for the last 45 minutes. I hope this was useful. With that, let me jump on to the question. Please feel free to start putting up your questions on the chat section. Okay, there's a question from Jaswant. Can we get video of this meeting and PPT? Jaswant, you won't get the PPT, but you will be getting the recording of this video. So all the people who have registered on our webinar, you will get a mail from us and a WhatsApp message from us, which will have the link for the recording of this webinar, plus our program details, plus the free diagnostic test link. So we will be sending out all these three things back to you guys soon enough. Next question from Prasan Patil. Do you have adaptive digital SAT mock test? Finding it difficult to get adaptive test. No, Prasan, even we don't have the adaptive digital SAT mock test. I don't think anyone has the adaptive digital SAT mock test. And the reason is you cannot build the adaptive system unless you know how the scoring is work, right? So College Board has not released how the scoring is being done in terms of adaptiveness format. And hence it is going to be linear until there is some clarity from them. However, I don't think it makes any difference because it doesn't really matter, because I think you prepare for a particular level, and even if it goes slightly easier than that, you'll be able to manage it. So yes, I don't think you'll be able to find adaptive digital SAT mock test. It's nowhere in the market today. What's a good score in SAT? Great question, Priya. So I think 1500 plus is in 99th percentile, or 1510, 1520 is the 99th percentile. So if you're able to get anything above that, I think it's an amazing score. But I think a good score ideally depend on the college that you want to apply for, right? So I think the most important question is to figure out what kind of colleges you want to apply for. Go to their college admission undergrad website and figure out what is their mean or a median SAT score, right? That will give you a clarity in terms of what score you want to figure out, right? So they generally give a 75th percentile, 50th percentile, and 25th percentile score. Try and see if you can get a 75th percentile plus score, because that will increase your chances for admissions. Another question from Ansel. Can you take the digital SAT at home? No, Ansel, you still have to go to the center and do the exam there. You can carry your own system for sure. Abida, will formulas be provided? That's right. Formulas will be provided to you, Abida. Gurnor Kaur, what is the difference between IELTS and SATs? Very, very different exams, Gurnor. IELTS is just an English proficiency test, which is not required for admission, just for the immigration process. SATs, on the other hand, are a completely different exam. They are required for undergrad admissions. Akriti Agarwal, when do we have repeat of this webinar, or will the recording be shared? I started late. Akriti will be sharing the recording of this webinar. So I hope you have registered for this webinar. If you have, then you will get the mail. And you'll also get the WhatsApp message from us. Another question from Mr. Dhananjay. Till what time the SAT scores be valid? Are they applicable in IITs? The scores are valid for 5 years. They are not applicable in IITs, Dhananjay. However, there are colleges like BITS, triple IITs, where SAT scores are valid only if in case you are a OCI card holder, right? Non-Indian citizens. Another question from Amita. What should be the minimum score for SAT? There is no minimum score for SAT, Amita. For every score that you have, you will have a college. So I think you need to try and get the best score that you can and then apply based on it. Another question from Sharmila. Please upload this recording. Also, it is very helpful. Thanks, Sharmila. Thanks for the feedback. And we will do the recording. Both exams are based on American English. That's right, Abhita. Both SAT and ACT are both based on American English. Another question from Ishrat Khan. Can we get the recording of this webinar? It will be useful for further reference. Definitely, Ishrat. We will be doing that. Abhida, is PSAT compulsory for summer school? Not really, Abhida. I think what you can do is, if you're targeting any particular summer school, you should go and check on their website. You will get the requirement. It's never mandatory. It's always optional, but if you've done it, it's always advisable to do it if in case you're applying for summer schools. Amita, any resource material for PSAT? So you largely work with the SAT material, Amita, because the content is the same. It's just that the level of question would be easier. The difficulty level would be easier. And that's pretty much. Another question from Ansel Muhammad. I'm in 12th and I've not taken any tests. Any chance for me while applying? Ansel, if you're in 12th, you're very, very late. I think you need to start as soon as possible. Do you have chance? Yes, you still have chance, because so the application process will start around September, October timeframe. So you can write another next attempt, which is happening in August. And then there is one more in October. So these are the 2 attempts, SAT attempts, which are left that you can apply. So any parent, any student who are already there, please make sure you don't delay it until 12th grade. It's very, very late. Ideally start in 10th or the summer break of 10th. That's the ideal time. But if you're already in 11th or in 12th, you need to start today. You know, it is that important. Another question from Prasad, SRM also. Prasad, as I said, you can go and check on that website. I think, yes, SRM is also accepting SAT scores now, but you can check on the College Board website. The list is already there. Sam, please share today's recorded session. Will be very helpful in the future. Definitely, we will do that. Mohammed, may I know 1410 SAT score will make me eligible to get placed in Ivy Leagues? Mohammed, as I told you right in the beginning, SAT score is just one parameter. There are multiple other parameters that helps you to get admission to college. So it'll have to be looked into holistic way. But I think what you should need to do is go and check your Ivy League colleges that you're targeting. On their website, you will figure out the 75th percentile. So if you're not in the top percentile bracket, your chances will always be lower. So 1410 is a low score. If you're looking at top colleges, you want to try and see if you can do better than this and redo it again maybe in August. Another question from Prasad, SAT validity. So some unis insist on latest scores. SAT scores are valid for 5 years, Prasad? No, there are no university which insist on latest scores. You can submit as and when you have done those exams. They don't differentiate between when you did these exams. Another question from Pradesh. Are there any tests other than SAT which would help if you are applying for European universities? You don't have to write any exams for European universities. Individual colleges might end up having different individual exams. You might want to look at it, but there is no standard exam like SAT for universities. Another question from Ruchita. What's a good time to begin coaching for SAT and ACT, grade 9th or grade 10th? I would say grade 10th. Grade 9th is a bit early, is what I would recommend. Any idea on fees? I'm assuming fees for the registration, it's roughly about $150 for the exam. If you are asking for our program fees, we will be sharing the brochure. So that will have all the details, Mr. Girish, because as I said, we have multiple programs that we offer. Prasan Patel, thanks Rajdeep, thanks Prasan. Vishwak, US citizen kids living outside US also are eligible for PSAT MSQ. I mean for the scholarship. Definitely, Vishwak. That's what I said. So if you're an OCI card holder or you're staying outside of US and you're a US citizen, you should try and write your PSAT in grade 11. You are eligible for an MSQT. Another question from Hari. My son is in grade 9. Are CBSE students greater than equal to IB students? I didn't really get the question. Do you mean IB students have a preference over IB students? If that's a question, no. There is no such preference. Though IB is more recognized in US, no doubt about it. You get college credits when you do IB courses in school. Unlike CBSE where you don't get any credit. So if there is any advantage, it will be more inclined towards IB rather than the CBSE. Another question from Sarvil Malani. When will digital ST start, or is it already started? It has already started, Shavil. The first digital ST happened in March 2023. So there are already 2 digital ST which has happened so far. Another question from Akriti. Thanks, Rajdeep sir. The best SAT webinar we have had. Truly best firm to prepare. Oh, thanks, Akriti. Thanks for your amazing feedback. Inayat, can we give both, and is ACT acceptable in the UK? Yes, you can give both, but ACT is not required in UK. If you're applying to UK, you don't have to write any of these exams. Depending on what course you apply for, accordingly, you'll have to write the exam. If you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge, Oxbridge, you have a different exam that you need to write. If you're applying for medicine, there's a UCAT and a BMAT exam that you need to write. Otherwise, you don't have to write any exam for UK. Another question from Mr. Prasad. How many attempts should one give at max? We generally recommend 2, at max 3, but nothing more than 3. That's the threshold that we keep. Another question from Shushti. Does SAT allow you to directly send scores to desired college? That's right. That's how it works. When you register for the exam, along with the exam, you can send it to 4 colleges. And at a later stage, you can submit these scores to whichever college you want to. You will end up paying for every college that you are sending the scores to, right? So you basically ask the college board to send the scores. So that's how it gets routed. Another question from Arnav. Are there any good books for the digital SAT preparation? Unfortunately, Arnav, digital SAT, the material is not there so much. But if you're looking for just the material, you can reach out to us. As I said, we have a program wherein you just take the material and prep on your own. So if that's something that you're looking at, feel free to reach out to us. I think the numbers are being posted here. I would request Tanish Ayush to post the numbers again in the chat section, and feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to take up and discuss. I'm going to Sheetal. I'm going to 10th grade. When should I start prep, and what is the ideal time to take the test? Sheetal, I think we still need to figure out a little bit more things, couple of things, like for example, in terms of when you said 10th grade, you're in which curriculum, which board, all those things are very, very important. Generally, if you're coming from international curriculum, we recommend that you start in grade 12th. However, if you're coming from CBSE, ICSE state board, then we say the summer break of grade 10. So right after your board becomes super important. Girish, number of experience for tutors. I didn't get the question. So we are a 7-year-old company, Girish, if that's the question that you're asking. If you're asking for individual tutors, we have about 14 plus people who are working with us. Different people have different years of experience, ranging from 5 years to about 15 years, maybe. But we as a company have been doing this for about 7 years now. Subramaniam, can we take an year break after 12 to prepare for ACT? You can do that, Subramaniam, but it's not advisable at all. You will have to justify it, right? You can't say that I took a gap year because I wanted to prepare for ACT, right? Because then you start at a sort of a negative framework, right? Because colleges will see and they say that if others could do it, why could you not do it, right? So the other way to look at it is maybe you will have to do something more productive in that break year rather than just doing the ACT. ACT could be just one part of it, but I'm happy to discuss it one-on-one. I think the number on the screen that you guys see, the first number, that's my number. Feel free to call or drop me a WhatsApp message. Happy to set up a one-on-one and discuss this as well. Arav Krishna Bilas, thank you for a very informative webinar. Thanks, Arav. Thanks for your kind words. Arman, does SAT resist damage my application? Okay, sorry. Does SAT resist damage my application to university? No, Arman. I think up until 3 attempts, it's completely fine. Almost everybody does that. Also, one more important information I forgot to mention. So there are certain universities which allow you to super score, right? What is super scoring? You can take English from one test and maths from other one, right? So your super score will always be higher than your normal score, right? Hence, it's advisable to do it twice at least. Some people do it thrice, which is completely okay, but nothing beyond that. Another question from Amita, sir, how could be the marking scheme for PSAT as per the questions? Sorry, I didn't get the question, Amita. How could be the marking scheme for PSAT as per the question? The marking works very similar to the SAT. Nothing changes there, but I'm not very sure if I've answered that question. So maybe if you can redraft that question and put it again. Another question from Mohammed. Hi, apart from STAC, is there any other thing which would help you have your admission in USA? Mohammed, if you remember my first slide, the 4 pillars, the academics, standardized test, profile building, college application. All of it pulled together will help you get admission in US. Not just one thing, right? You have to really do well in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th academics. to do well in your standardized test, then build good profile, do all the other auxiliary things that you need to do, internship, research work, whatever you can, and then write good essays, compelling essays, and then apply, right? So everything put together would really help you to get into college. Again, as I said, it is a one-on-one process. It is personalized process. Feel free to reach out to us. Happy to help and sit with you for one-on-one. Vishwak, thank you, Rajdeep. This session is so useful. Glad it was useful. I hope this Saturday morning was fruitful. Glad you liked it, Vishwak. Thanks for your feedback. Ishrat Khan, what are the scholarships available for students in this core? That varies, Ishrat. So I think it's a very different question. I think we'll have to kind of go in detail into it. There are different sort of scholarships which are there right now, but I would say the chances are very, very bleak, especially for the undergrad market. Question from Girish, is grade 11 CBSE math syllabus helpful in SAT exam? Not required, Girish, right? Because grade 11 CBSE will have a calculus and everything else. But if you have just looked at the SAT syllabus, math, you don't really need any of the grade 11 portion. It's only up until grade 10th. I'm a state board student. Do I have any disadvantage by applying? Not really, and you don't. I mean, there's a slight disadvantage, but what you really need to do is you need to make up for it, and there are different ways to do it. As I said in today's webinar, we have not talked about APs, which are advanced placement courses. That's the answer to the question that you are asking. Feel free to reach out to our, go on our YouTube channel and see the AP webinar recording. We will anyways do it next month, but if in case you want to go through it now, feel free to go to our YouTube channel and look at our AP webinar recording. That will help you understand what you can do to compensate for the board that you're coming from. So I think that would help, Ansel. From Prasad, PSAT, is it my school dependent or I can give outside school in India? You can give outside of school as well, Prasad. That's definitely possible because not every school conducts PSAT in India. It's very few schools who do PSAT in India. Priya, thanks for the valuable insight. Pleasure, Priya. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Prasad, is PSAT also digital pattern like SAT? Great question, Prasad. There is no clarity yet. This year it was a pen and paper. Next year it might probably be digital, but we are still waiting to hear back from the college board. Amita, thanks for the information, sir. Thanks, Amita. Aman, does SAT reset damage any application to university? I think I answered this question, Aman. Pradesh, thank you for the informative webinars. Thanks, Pradesh. When we are the classes offline or online, all the sessions are online. When we are not offering offline right now. Muskan, can I apply for PSAT in India? I'm in grade 9. Yes, definitely you can do it PSAT in India. And you can do it when you're in grade 9th as well. Question from Girish, very good and informative session. Thanks, we'll contact soon. Thanks, Girish. Pleasure that you like it. Prasad, will AP scores also strengthen for Indian students? Definitely, Prasad. They are super, super helpful. As I said, please feel free to go to our YouTube channel, look at our AP webinar. We will be doing it anyways next month. Feel free to connect with us. We can help you out, direct you towards the right webinar, and then we can take the discussion forward from there. Ansel, my 9th board were cancelled due to the pandemic. Would colleges ask for my 9th result? Don't worry about that, Ansel. That has happened with a lot of other students. The school will give the score. So don't worry about that. The basic or standard math, which one is helpful with ST or ACT? Basic or standard math? Sorry, which curriculum are you talking about, Abida? You probably might want to give me a little bit more context. That might help. Shushti, where can we give PSAT in Bombay, sir? Also, thank you for such an informative session. Shushti, I don't know the exact school. Sorry for that. You'll have to go to the College Board website. Please write PSAT in Bombay. Go to College Board website, PSAT College Board, and then you'll be able to see cities. And when you select Bombay, you'll be able to figure out the schools which are offering it in Bombay. Otherwise, if you're not able to help get it, feel free to reach out to us guys. I think Tanish would drop the message. I think he has dropped the numbers. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll probably help you with that. Mohammed, thank you. It was very helpful. Thanks, Mohammed. Siri, what score is considered as ideal score for Ivy League colleges? Siri, there is no score as an ideal score for Ivy League college. the more you can get it, the better it is, but no score will guarantee you admission in Ivy League. Let me tell you that honestly. I have a student who had a 1590, could not get into Ivy League. I have a student who has a 1480, could get into Ivy League, right? So SAT, remember, unlike India, US admission doesn't really work so straightforward, right? It's not based on you get a score, you get the admission. No, that's why I said there are 4 pillars, right? Each pillar has its own importance, right? So somebody at a 1480 could get it and 1590 could not, because the other pillars probably were not strong enough for this individual who got a 1590, right? So you just need to do your best and do your best in all the different pillars and not just one pillar. I think that is super important, Siri. Another question from Ansel, percentage you have in 11th to have a good profile? 100% Ansel, right? I mean, so there's, as I said, the more you can get, try and do your best. The more you have, the better it is. Sarayu, thank you for such an informative webinar. Prasad, do IGCSE need to appear AP? Prasad, not necessarily, but again, it all depends on why do we want to write APs, right? So as I said, I don't want to get into the APs because it's again very, very different and everybody might just get confused and overloaded with information. I would humbly request you to go through this webinar. I have taken all these questions there. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll probably direct you to the right link as well. Just that I don't want to cover AP because it's very, very vast as a topic. Arman, is PSAT only for US citizen? Not really, Arman. Anybody could write it. Another question from Girish. Any scores, results from past ReWiser kids which you want to share? So Girish, I think it's, I mean, I generally, move away from it. I mean, we have a 1590. There are many students who got a 1590, 1580, 1570s, 36 on 36, perfect score. So we have all those scores, but I think I give credit to the student for all of this. We are just a tool. We are just a helping hand, with the same practice, same set of faculty, same program, one person can get a 1590 and the student might get a 1400, right? So I think nothing changes, right? But just with 2 different students, it goes in a different format, right? So hence I give all the credit, but I would request Tanish, just put the link for the result page. On our website, you can go and look at the result page. We have updated few wherever we have permission from the parents. We take the permission from the parents and then post it up. Otherwise, we don't. So you can find some of our scores there, Girish. Abida, in CBSE after 10th basic or standard math, which one is helpful with STST? Oh, after 10th. Okay. See, for STST, either is okay. Doesn't matter at all, right? Because there's no calculus, there is no advanced trig and all of that. So I think it's only the basic component that you're really looking at it. So for the STST prep, it does not really matter at all. So both are okay. Perfect. So thanks, Ayush. I think Ayush has put up our webinar recording here. So yes, I think Ayush has put in the link for our old AP webinar recording, and he has also put in our link for our YouTube channel. Please go ahead and subscribe it because post every webinar, we keep going and updating it. So as and when it gets updated, you'll get the notification at your end and you can go and watch any of these recordings for future as well, if in case you're not able to attend it live. Great. Any other questions that anyone has here? I think I've taken all the questions which are there in the chat section at least. Perfect. Great. I think I don't have a question. I hope it was useful and informative session. I hope I was able to give some clarity and some thought and some direction to what you guys are thinking. As I said, it is a one-on-one process. It is a personalized process. Feel free to reach out to us as and when you need help. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I think this was super useful, super helpful. Hope to see you guys next time in the AP webinar. Okay, and the question from Manjuli, is there a negative marking? No, Manjuli, there is no negative marking. Sir, is NIOS accepted in IVs? Yes, NIOS is accepted in IVs. Great, thanks again. Thank you. Thanks for joining in. Bye-bye. Take care. Have a lovely weekend. Bye.